This is the Earth to World Broadcasting Network.
Thank you, Mark. Our final speaker, Freddy Lunt, has been president and owner of Princeton Property Management since 1984. Prior to acquiring Princeton, Freddy worked with industry legend Robert Randall and served as CEO of CTO Management Company. She is a graduate of New York University and holds an MBA from Central Missouri State. Freddy was the 2009 recipient of the prestigious Ross Day Award and was a founding member of MMHA, serving as president of the association in 2002. I really have no idea what she is planning on talking about this morning, but I certainly hope it is not about income and expenses. Boring. So here's the charming and charismatic and never boring Freddy.
When Steve asked me what I was speaking about, I told him I had been assigned to talk about income and expenses, and he responded, boring. And I told him that I'd really much rather sing and dance, but that's not what I'm getting paid to do. So poor you won't get to see that. The city of Portland and its environs has had many an out-of-state newspaper attention this last year. We are not only the city of Portlandia and put a bird on it, we most recently have been heralded for a 2-hour wait to get an over-designed donut at Voodoo Donuts. Happily, that wait will improve greatly in the next few weeks when Voodoo moves into the old Brabati Plan space and will be able to produce donuts 3 times faster than they have been able to so far. In a parallel world, some very heavy-hitting economists have also been touting our home. Kiplinger recently listed Portland on a short list of comeback cities for 2011, quoting an expected 3% decline in unemployment. And although we're not quite there yet, rumor has it that we're working in that direction, and PDC has ostensibly set aside $4.4 million in loans and grants to create and retain jobs. More recently, the Bloomberg Businessweek listed Portland's Tri-City area as the 4th steepest in rent hikes during the last year. An 8% increase was cited, along with a 4.7 vacancy loss attached to 2% in, might I say, concessions. That comes to 6.7% in effective rents, vacancy. There is no doubt that when it comes to occupancy and rent raises, the news is good, even if the stated rates differ from expert to expert. The trend clearly is undeniably positive. And it's not that I'm a pessimist or that I don't hold the same optimistic views of my panel members, but it's because I'm a property manager that I have cultivated or was born with a healthy dose of cynicism. And as a result, I look at the news right in the face, this good news right in the face, because quite frankly, there are 2 things I want to be sure of. I don't want any surprises, and I don't want surprises for our clients, and I don't want to be blindsided by something that I'm not at least perched to expect. When we talk about increased percent of rent, my cynical side reminds me that percent is merely a product of the original rent. And we all know that original rent, when it's low, the percent will increase. And on the West Coast, the Portland market has always been lower than our neighbors to the north and to the south, allowing our percentages of increase to often appear higher because of the lower basis. Along this same line, while loving these increases and taking advantage of them at every turn, I am aware, and I think lots of you out there are too, that in some parts of the Tri-County area, rents are not as high as they were 8 years ago. During the last 8 years, even if you did not lower your market rents, you were probably getting about 1% annually on top of what you had. And so if we do get the 8, 10, and in some places 12% increases we're looking at now as we're coming into the better market, it simply makes up for a very lot of lost time. Often when we read about the large numbers of people who are coming into the rental pool, one of the sources cited for the increase in those folks are those whose homes have gone into foreclosure. And indeed, many of those people have entered the housing or the rental market. So have their homes. And I think it's important that we remember that basically, and each time a homeowner comes back as a renter, it is not a 100% win for us. Occupancy is up, I love that, but because I am an old person, but one who still has a memory, I find it a sort of less exciting when we talk about getting to a 5% vacancy, because I remember the days when 5% was pro forma. These days, it's a rare lending institution that accepts that number when determining value and ultimate loans. Does our excitement, as somebody suggested, at these improvements mean that we have lowered our expectations? I don't know, but I do know one thing that we've lowered, which is our criteria. The last few painful years have seen many landlords develop a more lenient credit criteria. My friends at BI were kind enough to share with me the fact that during the last 12 months, using a sample of 150,000 screens and clients' criteria, there was 16% denied applications. During the previous 5 years, that number was 18% denied. I would like to be like Seinfeld and add to that, not that there's anything wrong with that, but we don't know yet. The jury's out, and we don't know if we're going to suffer from more lost rent or more property damage. I worry a lot. And I worry about how low vacancies and higher rents affect affordable housing. As people have more of a challenge finding secure, safe, affordable housing, I think about the blogs that I occasionally read on the subject, many calling for tenants to organize. Our state is one that has historically listened to these voices. It makes me glad that we as a group have a wonderful lobbyist, but I think that we need to be aware that there can be concerns that reach the legislature that will change our path a bit in the future. This worry may be purely existential, but I throw it out there because we live in a state where we've learned that it has to be considered as we go forward. Many landlords have chosen to sign less than year leases, which has been a great idea because as the rents improve, it gives you more flexibility in raising the rents more quickly than annually. My suggestion would be that all of you out there know which of your units and which of the communities are the most desirable. And in those cases, I would step back and take a really good hard look at shorter than annual rents so that flexibility remains with you. In preparing for today, I too looked at the utility pass-throughs and was quite surprised, not including the Southern Valley where I know that they were late coming in, but we, you, us, are only 50% on board for passing through utility expenses. That information is in the pass-outs that you got today. From my personal experience, I've discovered that utility charges have become a matter of course for residents. It might also surprise you to hear that no part of town is more or less difficult in receiving the collections for utility pass-throughs. Areas that we represent here that seem to be really slow on getting on board are Northwest Portland, which is very shocking to me, and Oregon City and Gladstone. Those places haven't had really bad occupancy issues either, so I would encourage all of you, as we've discussed earlier today, to get on board with that, because these, just in case you haven't heard it enough, these costs are going to escalate, which was my brilliant segue into discussing the expenses of your profit and loss sheet. Just a few words. They never go down. Expect them to go up. I'm going to mention the few that irritate me the most recently, and I was happy to hear that other people on the panel have discussed them also. I know Portland's not the only district out there. We represent lots of districts, but in every single one of them, Portland being, with a great headline, the hottest, the most talked about, but water and sewer expenses have gone nuts. And they promise to go nuttier. Nobody will give us a clue as to where they're going, except to say that in 5 years they're going to double. Really, there's not a lot to be done. The antidotes that I can think of are good local lobbying, which we're happy to say that Metro has, charging residents a fair share, and making sure that anything in and on your property that can leak doesn't leak. Even with those tools, this will absolutely negatively impact your bottom line. I suspect that I am not the only one who has experienced some significant bank charges since the interest rates have gone down. Looking at those charges one at a time, they're certainly not staggering. But if you haven't taken a look at every bank charge that you had in 2010, doing so might be a very unpleasant surprise. Trust me, it impacted your bottom line. Taxes, which we've discussed, have also increased. It's kind of interesting. This year we decided to be proactive, as Chris suggested, and we had all of our properties looked at in terms of reducing taxes, and very few were positively impacted by that activity. Interestingly, the excuse or the reason that was given were that there were so few sales, which we know are true in the last few years, that it was too difficult to rationalize a change in value. Perhaps if we all get on the bandwagon and do that, some pressure could be applied. And we will be nice, absolutely. On a final cynical note, all of you that own income property own property that's a year older today than it was this time last year. Nothing lasts forever, and age is not a friend of real property. Asphalt costs more because oil costs more, which means your parking lot will cost more and your roof shingles will cost more. Ultimately, there will be product on the market, and they will be in competition with us. And in order to stay competitive, you really have to maintain that edge by keeping the interior and exterior of your properties sharp as possible. We all know that in the long run, that always pays off. But in the short run, after the few years that we've had, it's a really hard thing to face. But I would recommend that we face it and get that needed work done, because the competition is coming. Despite the negatives, there is no investment that has brought more money over the years to investors than income property. It's a great place to be. We're entering an exciting time. We deserve it. We've waited for it. So don't let it pass you by, but be alert and proactive. Be enthusiastic about your product. Be careful, but not too careful. Thanks.
Do we have time for questions? Okay, we have time for questions. Questions? No one has any questions? No? Okay. No questions. Thank you so much to our panel. I thought it was a terrific presentation, and I think we will move forward into 2011 with a lot more information and I think a decent dose of optimism. Thank you. Jeff?
Thanks again to everybody. Have a great day, and if you could, fill out the surveys for us.
This is the Earth to World Broadcasting Network.